Bread is one of those things that Australians buy without thinking too much about it. You walk into the supermarket, you grab the loaf you always grab, maybe you pick whatever is on special, and you are done. It is one of the most routine purchases most households make every single week. And because it feels so ordinary and so familiar, most people never stop to ask whether the bread they are buying is actually good for them, or whether the brand on the label is being straight with them about what is actually inside the bag. But when you do stop and ask those questions, when you actually look at the ingredient lists, the nutritional panels, the processing methods, and the marketing claims being made on the packaging, what you find is genuinely surprising, and not always in a good way. The Australian bread market is full of products that present themselves as wholesome, natural, and nourishing, while delivering something considerably less impressive in reality. And it is also home to a smaller number of genuinely good products from brands that are doing things the right way and deserve more recognition than they typically get. So today, we are going through 8 Australian bread brands that the data, the ingredient lists, and the nutritional evidence suggest you should be approaching with caution or avoiding altogether. And then, we are finishing on a positive note with 3 brands that are genuinely worth your money. Let us get into it. Number 1. Wonder White. Wonder White has been a fixture in Australian supermarkets for decades, and its name alone tells you something about the marketing strategy at work. The word wonder is doing a lot of heavy lifting on that packaging, because the product inside is a long way from wonderful when you examine it closely. Wonder White built its reputation on the claim that its bread was softer, lighter, and more digestible than traditional white bread, and for a generation of Australian families, that was enough to make it the default choice. But the nutritional reality of Wonder White is one that dietitians and nutritionists have been raising concerns about for years. The bread is made from highly refined white flour that has been stripped of most of the fiber, vitamins, and minerals that were present in the original grain. What you are left with is a product that digests very quickly, causes a rapid spike in blood sugar, and provides relatively little in the way of lasting satiety or genuine nutritional value. The ingredient list includes a range of additives, including emulsifiers, preservatives, and dough conditioners that are there to give the bread its characteristic soft and pillowy texture and to extend its shelf life, not to make it more nutritious or more honest as a food product. The marketing around Wonder White has leaned heavily on its softness and on vague claims about being a source of various nutrients. But when you compare it gram for gram with a genuinely whole-grain bread, the difference in nutritional quality is stark and significant. This is a product that survives almost entirely on brand familiarity and nostalgia rather than on any genuine merit as a nutritious food choice. Number 2. Tip Top, The One. Tip Top is one of the most recognizable bread brands in Australia, and The One is one of its flagship products, a white bread that is marketed with the kind of confident simplicity that suggests it has everything a bread buyer could possibly need. The packaging is clean and the branding is assertive, but once again, the ingredient list tells a more complicated story. The One is a highly processed white bread that relies heavily on refined flour as its primary ingredient, meaning that the natural fiber content of the original wheat grain has been largely removed during processing. The bread contains a range of additives, including emulsifiers and preservatives, and like most commercially produced white breads, it has a glycemic index that nutritionists would consider high, meaning it is digested quickly and does not provide the kind of sustained energy that a more complex carbohydrate source would deliver. Tip Top has made various attempts over the years to position some of its products as healthier choices, adding seeds or promoting added vitamins and minerals. But the fundamental issue with a product like The One is that these additions are essentially cosmetic improvements to a product that starts from a nutritionally poor base. Adding a handful of sunflower seeds to a loaf of highly refined white bread does not transform it into a genuinely nutritious product, and presenting it that way to consumers is at best misleading and at worst a genuine disservice to the health of the people buying it. Number 3. Abbott's Village Bakery. Abbott's Village Bakery occupies an interesting and somewhat frustrating position in the Australian bread market because it has very successfully cultivated the image of an artisan product without necessarily delivering on that promise in terms of actual ingredients and processing methods. The branding is warm and inviting, evoking the idea of a small local bakery where bread is made with care and quality ingredients by people who genuinely love their craft. The reality is that Abbott's Village Bakery is a mass-produced commercial product, and when you look at the ingredient lists of several of its popular lines, you find a range of additives, dough conditioners, and preservatives that are entirely inconsistent with the artisan image being projected. This is a phenomenon that food industry observers sometimes call artisan washing, the use of rustic fonts, warm color palettes, and nostalgic imagery to create the impression of a traditional, natural product, while the actual contents of the package are far more industrial in origin and composition. Some Abbott's products are better than others, and the brand does offer some genuinely higher fiber options, but the gap between the image being sold and the reality inside the bag is wide enough that consumers deserve to know about it before they pay a premium price based on an artisan impression that is not fully warranted. Number 4. Helga's. Helga's is another brand that has built enormous equity in the Australian market on the basis of its positioning as a premium, European-inspired bread with a focus on quality ingredients and traditional methods. The branding is sophisticated, the packaging is elegant, and the price point sits noticeably above the budget end of the market. And to be fair, Helga's does offer some products that are meaningfully better than the cheapest white breads on the shelf. But there are aspects of the Helga's range that warrant closer scrutiny, particularly around the sodium content of several popular lines and around the use of various additives that are somewhat at odds with the clean and wholesome image the brand projects. Some Helga's products contain sodium levels that are high enough to be a concern for people who are monitoring their salt intake, and the presence of various dough conditioners and emulsifiers in what is presented as a premium, quality-focused product raises questions about whether the premium price is truly justified by the ingredients inside. The Helga's range is not the worst option on the supermarket shelf by any means, but the premium price tag creates a reasonable expectation of genuinely superior ingredient quality that is not always met when you examine the actual contents of the packaging carefully. Number 5. Coles Finest Bakery. Supermarket own brand bread has come a long way in Australia, and Coles has invested significantly in presenting its Finest Bakery range as a genuine alternative to the established branded players. The in-store bakery aesthetic, the paper bag packaging, and the positioning around freshness and quality are all carefully designed to create the impression that you are buying something a meaningful step above the plastic-wrapped standard loaf. And in some respects, the Coles Finest Bakery range does deliver on that promise. The bread is often genuinely fresher than its packaged competitors, and some products in the range do use better quality base ingredients. But consumer feedback and nutritional analysis have raised some concerns that balance out the positive impression. The sodium content of some Finest Bakery products is high. Certain lines contain more sugar than the premium positioning would suggest is appropriate, and the ingredient lists of some products include additives that feel inconsistent with the artisan-adjacent image the range is built around. The freshness advantage is real, but the nutritional profile of some products does not justify the premium that the Finest Bakery branding commands over standard options, and consumers who are buying this bread primarily for health reasons may be getting less benefit than they assume. Number 6. Woolworths Macro Whole Food Market Bread. The Woolworths Macro range has been cleverly positioned as a health-conscious alternative to mainstream products, and the macro branding carries strong associations with natural ingredients, whole food principles, and mindful eating. These associations are not entirely without foundation. Some macro products do genuinely deliver on the health promise the branding makes. But the bread range within the macro line has attracted criticism from nutritionists and consumer advocates who have pointed out that several products carry a health halo that is not fully supported by the actual nutritional profile. Some macro breads contain added sugars at levels that seem inconsistent with a whole food positioning. The fiber content of certain products, while better than the cheapest white breads, is not as impressive as the premium health-focused branding would lead buyers to expect. And the price premium commanded by the macro label means that consumers who are buying these products specifically for health reasons and paying extra to do so may be getting less value and less genuine nutritional benefit than they believe. The macro brand does good work in some product categories. The bread range, however, does not always live up to the standard that the overall brand positioning promises. Number 7. Baker's Delight White Bread. Baker's Delight is genuinely beloved in Australia, and the brand has built its reputation on the undeniable appeal of freshly baked bread sold from dedicated bakery stores, a model that feels meaningfully different from grabbing a plastic-wrapped loaf off a supermarket shelf. And for many of its products, that reputation is deserved. But the white bread range at Baker's Delight deserves a specific call-out in the context of nutritional value, because fresh and local does not automatically mean nutritionally sound. The white bread products sold at Baker's Delight are made from refined white flour, and the freshness of the product does nothing to change the fundamental nutritional limitations of that base ingredient. A fresh loaf of white bread is still a product with limited fiber content, a high glycemic index, and relatively modest nutritional value compared to a genuinely whole-grain alternative. The appeal of Baker's Delight is real, and the experience of buying there is genuinely pleasant. But consumers who believe that buying fresh from a dedicated bakery automatically makes their white bread a healthier choice than a packaged whole-grain alternative are operating on a misunderstanding that the brand's warm and wholesome image has perhaps not done enough to correct. Number 8. Nature's Own Wholemeal. Nature's Own is a brand that presents itself very firmly in the health-conscious space, with a name that explicitly invokes naturalness and a range of products that are clearly designed to appeal to buyers who are actively trying to make better food choices. The wholemeal range in particular sounds, on the basis of its name and its positioning, like exactly the kind of bread that nutritionists would recommend. And wholemeal bread is genuinely a better choice than refined white bread in a number of important respects. But the Nature's Own wholemeal products have attracted scrutiny because the wholemeal flour used as the primary ingredient is in some cases supplemented with refined white flour in proportions that meaningfully reduce the fiber benefit that buyers are expecting when they reach for a wholemeal product. The sodium levels in some Nature's Own products are also higher than the health-focused positioning would suggest is appropriate. And the presence of various additives and preservatives in what is marketed as a natural product creates a disconnect between the brand's name and values on one hand and the actual ingredient list on the other. Nature's Own is not the worst bread choice available, but it is a brand where the gap between the implied promise and the actual delivery is wide enough to warrant a careful reading of the label before you assume you are getting the natural, wholesome product the name suggests. Before we get to the 3 brands that are genuinely worth your money, if this kind of no-nonsense consumer content is useful to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We go through the products and brands that fill Australian supermarket shelves and give you the honest picture that the marketing budgets do not want you to have. Now for the good news, the safe picks. Number 1. Vinerdi. Vinerdi is a New Zealand-born brand that has built a strong following among health-conscious Australian consumers, and the consumer data and nutritional analysis largely support the enthusiasm. Vinerdi specializes in grain-rich, high-fiber breads that use genuinely whole ingredients rather than refined flour as their primary base, and the ingredient lists of their products are notably cleaner and more honest than most of what fills the bread aisle. The sodium levels are sensible, the fiber content is genuinely impressive, and the absence of the long lists of additives and dough conditioners that characterize so many commercial breads is refreshing and meaningful. Vinerdi bread does not try to be everything to everyone. It is not trying to replicate the soft and fluffy texture of a highly processed white bread using better ingredients, because that is not what genuinely nutritious bread looks or feels like. What it does instead is deliver a product that is honest about what it is, transparent about its ingredients, and genuinely supportive of the health outcomes its buyers are hoping for. It is more expensive than a budget supermarket loaf, but the nutritional gap between Vinerdi and those budget options genuinely justifies the price difference in a way that many premium-positioned brands simply do not. Number 2. Sonoma Bakery. Sonoma Bakery began as a genuine artisan operation in Sydney, and unlike several of the brands earlier on this list, it has managed to grow without abandoning the principles that made it worth paying attention to in the first place. Sonoma uses quality ingredients, long fermentation processes that meaningfully improve the digestibility and nutritional availability of the bread, and a commitment to transparency about what goes into its products that stands in refreshing contrast to the artisan washing practiced by some of its competitors. The sourdough range in particular has attracted strong support from nutritionists because the genuine long ferment sourdough process produces a product with a lower effective glycemic index than conventionally produced bread, better gut health credentials, and a depth of flavor that reflects the actual quality of the ingredients and process rather than the addition of flavor enhancers. Sonoma is genuinely more expensive than mainstream supermarket bread, and it is not available everywhere. But if you have access to it, the consumer data and nutritional evidence suggest it is one of the most honest and genuinely nutritious, commercially available bread products in the Australian market. Number 3. Baker's Maison. Baker's Maison is perhaps the least well-known of our 3 safe picks, but it deserves considerably more attention than it typically receives. The brand focuses on authentic French-style bread-making traditions, using simple ingredient lists that reflect a genuine commitment to quality over convenience and shelf life extension. The baguettes and sourdough products in the Baker's Maison range use flour, water, salt, and natural leavening agents, the kind of ingredient list that requires no explanation and no decoder ring. The sodium content is appropriate, the absence of artificial additives is genuine rather than merely implied by the branding, and the taste and texture reflect the quality of what goes into the product rather than the efforts of food technologists to simulate quality using cheaper base ingredients. Baker's Maison is stocked in selected supermarkets and specialty food retailers, and it sits at a price point that reflects the genuine quality of what is inside the bag. For consumers who want a bread that does what the packaging implies, Baker's Maison is one of the most consistently reliable choices available in the Australian market. So there it is. The Australian bread aisle looks simple and familiar, but underneath the packaging and the marketing claims, there is a significant range in quality, honesty, and genuine nutritional value. The brands to approach with caution are largely those that are either using inferior base ingredients while projecting a premium or health-conscious image, or charging prices that their actual ingredient lists do not justify. The brands worth your money are those that are transparent about what goes into their products, use genuinely quality ingredients and processes, and deliver nutritional profiles that actually support the health outcomes their buyers are hoping for. Read the labels, check the ingredient lists, and do not let a warm color palette or a rustic font make the decision for you.